Dun, dun, dun.
Yay!
Okay, hey everyone. Welcome. I'm Marie. This is Angie, and today we are chatting all about remote doulaing, or some people are calling this virtual doulaing. There's not really a name for it yet because, like, this is literally. I'm playing with my camera. Sorry. This is literally so new. It's like every doula so loves that connection. I think that connection is what makes most doulas do what they do. And so, how do we still create space for like support when we can't physically be in the same room anymore? So, to help me answer that question, I called in this lovely lady beside me who is Angie Evans. And Angie's a doula. She's been douling for quite a long time. She also trains doulas, does hospital tours, teaches some childbirth education. So she's got lots of experience in this realm. And happily, she has actually done this.
Mm-hmm.
So, Angie, how about, is that a good introduction? Do you
That
want
was that was great. Thank you. Yeah, I've had four. I named us Doula Doula, and I've been to four. Well, I've supported people through four births now without being in the room with them.
So, like, I guess to start, can you tell me about, or tell us about, like, about those births? What was it like?
It's hard not to be there. Like for the last three, we knew ahead of time. Like for the first one, we had 24 hours notice or something like that. So it was like cramming. So it's hard not to be there in person, but there's a lot we can do to help partners prepare. And so my work now is really focusing on helping partners like become a doula for a day kind of thing. It's funny because like years ago in Canmore, I taught a class called Doula for a Day. So people like partners or moms or whatever could come in and do hands-on support. And so now I'm kind of back to that, I guess, trying to teach people. Yeah, so that it's more like the prenatal work, and even the postpartum has more of a focus. But you know, people, they called me at all hours, and anytime they had a decision to make, or they said, you know, something's not comfortable, is there a position we can try, things like that.
Yeah, I think that what you mentioned about the preparation, that is so fundamental to birth, right? And I think that's a must for the woman as for the guy. And like childbirth classes, like what I teach is awesome for that. But also working with the doula, I think people forget that a lot of the work that a couple does with a doula is in the prenatal period. Yeah, so maybe for people who are unfamiliar, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I the prenatal prep is so important. Like I say, the three things that make the biggest difference to a birth are the position of the baby in your body, the preparation you do ahead of time, and then the team that's around you. Like I tell everybody who meets me for an intro appointment, those are the three biggest things.
I'm
So
like, yeah,
yeah,
that.
right. And so I spend a fair bit of time with my clients just getting like having meetings to help them get ready. I mean, this is COVID or no COVID. I've always focused so much because I've learned over the years. Like I've been a doula for almost 20 years. I've been to over 300 births now. And, you know, I've over the years just learned that if we haven't figured the thing, whatever the thing is going to be ahead of time, it's too late once they're already in labor. They need the tools. They need to have practiced the tools. We need to have that vision of an ideal birth. So all of that pertains to any kind of birth, whether it's a planned cesarean or a planned natural birth, home birth, hospital birth, whatever. So now I find without me being there, we're just amping that up even more.
Mm-hmm. So some of the other doulas I've heard talking about remotely, they've talked a lot about holding space and how it's possible to hold space for a couple even, over the phone or over the video. How do you feel about that?
I believe that's harder to do if we're not there in the room. Like it's fine to sit and, I don't want to contradict anybody, but just, there is a difference from sitting in the room and being a physical supportive presence and wishing them a good birth from home. I mean, you know what, it also depends on what people mean by holding space, because I know that term does mean a little bit different. It's different for different people. To me, it means helping people stay grounded. And I've had a lot of clients say, like, sometimes I'm not really hands-on at a birth. And I think that's why I can still be an effective doula. Even if I'm not in the room. It is better if I'm in the room. But just, if I'm working with a couple who wants to be really hands-on together, and, I've had lots of times where, especially the partner said to me, well, I could see you weren't trying to fix anything, or you weren't panicking about anything. So that helped me be calm. So I can offer that on the phone, just like listening to a laboring woman's contractions and the sound she's making, or surges, depending, how they've prepared. I can listen and encourage them and tell them that's really good, and find out from, either the partner or the laboring woman what's going on. And so lots of encouragement and lots of normalizing things. I think that can be grounding and holding space as well. But it's not the same as when they look at me sitting there calmly and they know, okay, we're doing good. There's nothing to fix here.
I think that's such a good point about the, to be that calm presence in the room, right? Or that calm presence over the phone or over the video, because I know when because in my work, I've researched a lot about, hormones and how like the stress hormones shift. And one of the things that I learned was that humans, and this is all humans inside of birth and outside of birth, if we're next to another person who is in stress, we register that on a deep physiological level, and our stress levels increase because our body is like, oh, this person next to me is feeling that there is a threat, and so therefore I better get up a little bit higher alert. And conversely, when everybody around me is really calm, my whole physiology goes, okay, I'm safe to be calm too. Right? And I feel like that's one of the things that is so wonderful about a doula, is that they've been through the birth experience, many times before. So it's a little different than a husband who, may have only experienced it once or maybe never before.
Yeah. And, that's such an important thing to keep in mind, because people right now who are having a hospital birth are going into a place where there is just inherently a lot of stress, like a lot of added stress. I know some people are really comfortable in hospitals. They love their team. They're looking forward to going in. Lots of other people, they've only been to the hospital when they were there for a pain or a stress, or to visit a loved one, they're injured, whatever. So for a lot of people, it's a little bit stressful just to go into the hospital. That's why I do tours and really try and help people feel good in the space. And, now they're going into a place where everyone's doing a great job. They're doing their best, but there's this underlying extra layer of stress right now that isn't usually there. And I believe people, especially laboring women, totally feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that anything that they can do that creates that sort of sacred safety bubble. I know in hypnobirthing, we do this thing called the bubble of peace, as one of the visualizations to help them feel that they've got this safe, sacred space around them. And I think that, having another person, even if it's someone that they can call on the phone or through video, that can also reflect that back to them. Obviously, yeah, I think every doula would rather reflect it back like in person if they could. But yeah, finding other ways.
Yeah, and there's so much we can do even from afar, like reminding, one of my clients, I reminded them to do lunges. And then I told them how, actually took a picture of my daughter so I put her into the position and said, do it this way. And then I talked them through, and that can really help them shift like a back labor or the position of the baby. Or, you know, they're said, well, you know, this intervention's recommended. What do we do? And so, you know, I'm not giving medical advice or telling them what they should, excuse me, should or shouldn't do, but I reminded them of the questions, and I remind them of what they wanted. So, you know, given that you were hoping to have this kind of birth, and now that thing's been presented, here are some questions so you can understand what the best path is. Because doulas never determine what the best path is for somebody. We always support people. But it's, you know, it's really hard.
It's that, you know, it's someone to help process through the decision making.
Right. Because, you know, if it's not what happens in the birth, it's how they're treated in the birth and how they perceive what happened. Right. What's that?
Is it all meant to that too?
Yeah.
It's I always say, like, it's never, you know, just about what happens. It's about how you feel about what happens.
Yeah. And if, you know, it's not that the outcome might have changed, like, you know, the birth had this and this intervention. It's that they really felt good about it because they understood their choices and they were part of the conversation. And sometimes people just need a reminder. Lots of times, you know, especially if I'm working with first timers, they've been up all night. They're like, oh, we can't remember anything we learned prenatally. We don't even know what we're supposed to ask. What do we do? This has been recommended. And so that's where, you know, a calm presence can remind them that, okay, ask about the benefits and ask if there are other options. And, you know, so yeah, learning to navigate that over the phone. So far, phone is working better than video. When this all started, I pictured having Zoom calls with my clients, and, you know, it quickly became apparent that they couldn't just keep me on Zoom and stick me in the corner, because it's just weird and it almost feels voyeuristic. And plus the internet's not great in the hospital anyway, so they're watching their phone totally go down. And then it just became easier to just talk on the phone. I tell people they can put me on speakerphone, or if they don't want to have me on speakerphone, just each of them put one of the earbuds in. So they're like an earbud here and an earbud here, and then we can talk that way. Because sometimes it's loud in the hospital, or, you know, it's hard to have a conversation over speakerphone sometimes. So
that's actually really interesting. I too would have thought that, oh yeah, it's just going to move to video chat, but I could see why, if from a practical point of view, sometimes phone it would just make more sense then.
Yeah, and even for alertness, like, you know, for a doula to sit and watch like a reality show of someone giving birth. Like, I know a reality shows always show these very exciting, bizarre things that happen, but in real life, like, you know, birth is not like that.
Of like, I remember I watched a midwife talk about that once, and I started to kill myself laughing, because real birth doesn't, you know.
Yeah.
It's sacred, it's beautiful, but it's not like, it's generally not dramatic.
No, and that's the thing, that's the sacred part of it is a little different when there's just someone sitting on the screen staring at you. Can you imagine? Like, it even though I've been invited to the birth, it's different. So we found, you know, through trial and error, that it's just better to check in when needed. And often, like, people feel like, oh, I don't want to wake you up at night, but I'm begging my clients, like, please check in with me. Because one thing I noticed was, like, in birth, there are always these crossroads, right? Where we see something coming, and if there's an experienced doula, we can, you know, see, okay, I've seen this before. What can we do to either avoid that crossroad or deal with it in a more gentle manner? And if I'm not getting the call until someone says, okay, the doctor said I need a cesarean, you know, well, what were all the crossroads that led to that? Like, what could we have done 6 hours ago that might have prevented that, or just helped them feel better about having that cesarean?
Right.
So it's really important that when people dial a doula, they actually dial the doula to check in and get those crossroads taken care of. Yeah, so they don't
So,
look
so what
back.
you're,
And
so what you're, because, you know, birth can last for hours and generally it usually does. And so what you're finding is when people are accessing you during labor, they're sort of phoning in and spending some time with you and then hanging up and then phoning in. And like that,
yeah,
is that sort of the rhythm of how it's going?
that's the way it's been working best. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
And to tell me, and also like to share the good parts as well as the difficult parts. Because it's really natural to want to reach out to your doula, you know, or your teacher or whoever is going to be that, or whoever was supposed to be that extra person at the birth. It's really easy to reach out when you're scared or something isn't going quite the way you envisioned. But it's also important that they check in when things are going well and with progress updates. So, you know, when a question comes, I'm not then asking them 10 questions to figure out what the
where
heck's
they're
going
at.
on. How did we get here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And then in terms of the postnatal, how has that changed? Because most doulas, you know, include some postnatal support. So what does that look like now?
That's actually been a pleasant surprise for how good that's been. I just thought, you know, I'm not like usually I go see people the next day, whether they're at home or hospital, and then I'd go see them sometime in the first week if they want an extra visit. Some people just prefer checking in by phone. And I'm finding people are reaching out a little more, partly because they don't have, like, maybe they don't have that support in the house they thought they'd have. They don't have lots of visits with grandparents and people like that, for one thing. But also, it just seems easier, like to say, oh, hey, can you do a Zoom call or can you look at this thing? Just like we're doing now. Like it can be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour, like whatever they need.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it seems easier for them to just say, can you look at this thing or can we talk about this thing face to face, even though it's over the computer. They seem more likely to do that than will you drive across town to my house and come over for 5 minutes? Like we're, as a culture, we don't usually invite someone to drive across town and come to our house for 5 minutes, which I would do because I'm a doula. But
But people
so
feel like they're putting you out, so
yeah,
they hesitate.
yeah, because you know my like people are still usually really polite, and even though I tell them like just do what you need right now, we're really Canadians are really ingrained to not put people out too much. So I've really enjoyed the postpartum. I'm having more contact with my clients, and I mean at first there were some challenges like trying to find the appropriate picture of a certain body part in a baby to send and say, okay, this is what normal, this is the variations of normal. So I found an awesome site, Stanford Medical U has a really good site about what's normal. And they even have things like, this is what a baby's breathing sounds like. And so I've been sharing things like that so they could, you know, see what's normal. Because it's really hard when they're holding up their little iPhone and they're showing me a picture of some skin thing. And I'm like, oh, that I can't even see it. and it's also, you know, it's also good to encourage them to call public health because we're really lucky in our community that public health and midwives are still doing home visits. That's not the case everywhere. And so, you know, if I don't know or can't answer it, then I just remind them that they can call
Yeah.
the maternity visiting program to come over. And my clients have been raving about the care they're getting from them
I've
too.
always thought we were really blessed in having that. So for those of you who are listening in who might not be from Saskatchewan, like the two of us, we have a wonderful part of our public health where a specific group of public health nurses who only work with newborns and new moms come to your home the day after baby is born, both to check in on you, make sure that you're healing from the birth very well, and that also to check in on baby, do a baby weight check, and just to answer, you know, any concerns that might have come up. And then that public health nurse, you actually are paired with her for the next 6 weeks. So you have some real nice continuity so that you can phone someone who you've talked to before. So that is a real blessing. And I'm really thankful that that's continuing.
And right now the hospital's offering, I mean, they're always offering, but it's usually not as openly offered. Right now they're offering early discharge. So people after a straightforward birth can leave like 4 hours after their birth. They don't have to, but they can if they want to. And after a cesarean birth, the normal stay would be 48 hours, and they're offering them to go home in 24 hours if everything looks okay with mom and baby. So for those people who go home at 4 hours, so like some people are super comfortable caring for a baby. They don't want to be in the hospital because there's a pandemic going on. And so public health will come to their house to do all those 24-hour newborn tests that you would get done in the hospital normally. So that's really nice. People don't have to take their baby to a clinic just to get them weighed or get their blood checked or something like that.
Yeah, those are awesome things.
Mm-hmm.
So if if you had someone who came up to you and said, like, what's the value of having a doula when they can't be in the hospital? Like, how would you summarize that?
Definitely the prep. Like one of the people that I'm working with, or a couple that I'm working with, a new family, they had their baby, and you know, I had a list for him of all the things I do. Like I just downloaded my brain into a list of, okay, this is what I would do to set up a hospital room.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more than just drop your bag there and have your baby.
Yeah, because you want to create the space.
Yeah.
Right? I talk about that a lot in hypnobirthing too, right? Like, let's make this a space that really, like, delights your senses as much and makes you feel safe and secure as much as possible, because it's such a sterile environment.
Yeah. So I had this whole list, and you know, they called me, okay, we're in birth room 6 now. I said, okay, did you do this? Check that. He's like, yeah, I did it. And everything I was thinking he had done, because we had the luxury of planning. We knew this was going to happen. So they came to, there's a class Karen, Harriet, and I teach, Easing Labor Pain. It's a 2-hour class. The next one's actually Sunday this week. And so in that class, we teach the partners like double hip squeeze and counter pressure, and the effleurage that you teach in your classes. Like, we make sure they learn how to make informed choices and how to provide comfort. And so this couple did that class. They had all the lists. They must have read everything on my site, and we probably had 4 or 5 prenatal meetings just to make sure everything got ready. Because now I'm doing prenatal meetings like this too. Yeah. And I've been really impressed with how intimate we can have a conversation from Zoom. So that's been great. So yeah, just that prep. Like these two were totally ready when they went into that hospital. And then when he called, well, this is what she's feeling. Okay, I said, okay, well, remember double hip squeeze. Remember, put your elbows out, you know, wrists in, do that for a while. And so they were really prepared. And then they just needed reminders from me, because they were so well prepared going in. And then also just having that person, one of the couples I worked with, he had to go for a sandwich or something. So they just left me on the phone with her. I was on speakerphone for that. And she's laboring, and I'm like talking to her so he could take a break and get lunch.
Because that's what happens typically in a birth, right? That's one of the, you know, the go get a sandwich is always one of the reasons that I talk to the dads about, like, hey, well, why would you want an extra person? I'm like, because you won't leave her if you think that she's going to be all on her own, and if she's holding your hand looking at you with big eyes going, don't leave me, you won't. But you'd be real like much happier if you could go get the sandwich.
Right. Yes. Or they knew where to park, like when it was time to go in, or even like the home support, just listening and talking, okay, have you thought about going to the hospital yet? And, oh, it's this time of the day, on this day of the week, go to the ER. Or, oh, it's this time, you can go through the front doors, and telling them what to be ready for, what to bring. Make sure you've got your health card out, things like that. So there's still, I've been surprised how useful I've been, even though I'm not there in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yes.
fun, right? And some of the thing that, parts of this whole pandemic that are interesting is finding these, new possibilities and things that we thought, you couldn't do. Suddenly, oh, because we're forced to, we start to find new ways, right? And I think that's encouraging.
It is. Yeah. I've had a couple people in my classes that wouldn't have been able to take my classes if they were only
Yeah.
in town, because they lived so far away. And I had a meeting with someone else to help them make a birth plan and, answer all their questions about what to expect when they get to the hospital, because they were having their baby here, but they lived far away. And we wouldn't probably have done that if they
Yeah.
couldn't meet on Zoom. I've been teaching on Zoom for many years and doing meetings, but not like, more just a private appointments and things like
Yeah.
that. So there was a
Yeah.
bit of a scramble to get all my group stuff moved over. I trained doulas on Zoom, so I'm used to groups with that. But it is different with a group of people who don't know each other, like a prenatal class
Yeah.
is different than a group of doulas who did doula training together and now they're doing continuing ed.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I agree. And I think there, because one of the nice things is that, a lot of times we're talking about connection and, this is that's based a lot energetically. And that's something that, you know, yeah, it goes beyond, I can't think of the word, but it goes beyond time and space. So yeah, obviously it's lovely when we are in person, but I think it's helpful to remember that, that energetically there's no boundaries.
Yeah. So things that have been coming up lately, I've had several emails and messages from people where they're trying to figure out, like, how do we get the grandparents to meet the baby without meeting the baby? Like, what can we do? That's been really heart-wrenching for some people. Of course, now that everyone's so much more comfortable with this platform, I believe there are some grandparents from far away who are probably getting a little more time
Yeah.
than they would have. But the ones in town, I have lots of people have introduced the baby through the window at the front, and the grandparents are on the front lawn going, "Oh, I wish we could hold you." It's a tough time. It's going to be nice when they can meet up again. But the grandparents and aunties and friends have been really understanding and really generous about dropping off food, but not expecting to get invited in.
Yeah.
And I know they've recently done a small study in England, and they're finding breastfeeding rates are up and babies' weight gain is faster after, because
There's
we're
less.
not getting all the visitors.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if a lot of our people listening in know the backstory about why we dropped the amount of visitors in mom and baby unit, and that was as a result of H1N1. And I mean, we weren't under quarantine like we are, sort of now, but they limited the visitors. And then what happened is women stopped crying so much because they were more well rested and then felt more able to like deal with the challenges of a newborn. And breastfeeding rates went up. Babies cried way less because they were eating more regularly. And yeah, that I feel is a total, like, kind of side benefit to it all. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's because there's this inherent anxiety and stress in the world. I was curious what we would see with postpartum mental health, mother baby parent bonding, all of it, like
Mhm.
just how new families were going to manage. And for sure, it's been harder for some. I know in Saskatoon, the public health nurses are not going into people's home. And people can have a visit, but they have to go to an office. And you know, when you're holding a new baby, and for some people, having to get there would be a barrier. And so I understand, definitely there are some people who've been put into harder predicaments and struggling more. But there are other families who are certainly doing better because they are sort of being forced into that baby moon that we always tell them to take.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love the baby moon. Yeah. And having just yeah, and the thing is that if they can get the support via, you know, friends and family, by telephone calls and by, you know, dropping off food, right? Those are some of the things that, you know, new moms really need. So
yeah. And you're teaching online now. That's exciting.
I am teaching online too. Just like you, it was like I had taught hypnobirthing, you know, one-offs, private classes, sometimes when people were too far to drive in, or we had a snowstorm, as happens in Saskatchewan. But yeah, this has been different, having like a group class. And, you know, it is one of the things, because for me, connection is really everything. And so, you know, facilitating that, you know, even via Zoom, it's different, but it's not impossible. Yeah. So,
yeah.
But all right. Well, we are at a half an hour, and I wanted to kind of keep that around this long. So first of all, to everyone who is joining in and listening in, thank you. If you have more questions that we did not answer, hopefully, I tried to ask everything, that all the questions that came in. But if you have more questions, just send them our way, and we will answer them. So.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Marie. Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.
Happy Sunshine Day for this.
Yes, I'm going to go outside right now. Yeah.
That's my plan too.
Okay, enjoy.
Bye, everyone.